listening to episode 84 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm speaking with Sally Fallon, the founder of the Weston A Price Foundation. Back in 2014, I was just getting out of a raw vegan lifestyle, and previous to that, 5 years vegetarian, so quite a long time, a total of 9 years of not eating any meat at all. And I never cheated because it was mostly for ethics, and it became more about health over time, realizing that it couldn't be sustainable if I didn't stay healthy myself, and the ethics didn't matter if it couldn't sustain my own life. And so I've talked about in previous episodes how I believe there's a large spiritual component to why people exclude animal foods from their diet, and usually these aren't Christians that are doing it. And so just wanted to kind of mention that because I think that's not really talked about often, and I used to think that I could kind of just manifest or magically ascend past the need for these dense foods, supposedly vibrationally dense, but that's not the case. They're actually nutrient dense. They're nutrient dense foods, and the nutrients found in animal foods are just simply not found in plant foods. And there's many nuances to that and many arguments specifically about omega-3s that I've gone into in previous episodes, or iron or iodine, all of which I don't think needs to be considered at all in the diet. But besides that, everyone can agree that true vitamin A, aka retinol, preformed vitamin A, that's very important for thyroid function, for thyroid hormone in general to work, for copper to work. There's this interplay with retinol in our immune system and so many aspects of our body. And also copper, bioavailable copper, that's very dense in grass-fed ruminant animals' livers and shellfish. So that bioavailable copper and that retinol are very important. And I would say another argued point often is just the amino acids or the protein of animal products versus plant products. And I've experimented with this to the nth degree. I took it as far as possible. I tried to get all my protein from spirulina and blue-green algae and the most supposedly absorbable amino acids on the planet, and failed miserably. And so it wasn't sustainable, especially from just a economic standpoint. I would have to have, a whole royal jelly farm going, which is, I don't know if that's practical. So really just eating in a balanced way, supporting local farmers, having a homestead, that's what I'm really focusing on now, and being less neurotic about health, which is always a challenge. The more you learn, the more you want to mitigate and just do your best. But things are just not optimal right now. Even the best of the best foods are not even what they used to be. And so that's due to various factors: acid rain, the biogeochemical cycles being off, all of the pollutants that are kicked up into the atmosphere every single day, every year, billions of tons. And this has an effect on the food, water, and air. And so we do our best, and to me, doing our best is including animal products in the diet to get a wide variety of nutrients that do help to mitigate much of what we're exposed to today. So Sally Fallon, I think, has done a great job with the Weston A Price Foundation, just getting the word out there about animal foods. I think they have an awesome website on milk, on raw milk, realmilk.com. And on the website, it states the Weston A Price Foundation is your source for accurate information on nutrition and health, always aiming to provide the scientific validation of traditional foodways. People seeking health today often condemn certain food groups, such as grains, dairy foods, meat, salt, fat, sauces, sweets, and nightshade vegetables. But the Wise Traditions diet is inclusive, not exclusive. I think that's a pretty succinct, awesome explanation of what they do. And I believe that people should take the best from this foundation and then work that in with other protocols, maybe the root cause protocol from Morley and my CLF protocol, and just take the best from each little thing and make your own little program to reverse or heal from whatever you have going on. Because I think most conditions or symptoms can absolutely be reversed. So here we go. Here is Sally Fallon Morell. All right, we're here with Sally Fallon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. You were a big influence to me to leave veganism and vegetarianism years ago, and I came across Nourishing Traditions and just started looking into the power of animal foods, because I had been kind of programmed by the documentaries, the scary factory farm documentaries that are pumped out now, and people don't realize, the power of good quality grass-fed, just small scale animal foods and the power that they can have in all stages of life. And so, thank you. You were a big influence for that.
Well, I would say, yes, it's great if you can get really high quality meat. But even if it's not high quality, you still need the animal foods in your diet. You will end up with nutritional deficiencies without the animal foods.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's something I found out even on the mineral end, which I think is fascinating because the soil's not only depleted, but it's really toxic. They're putting crazy fertilizers on our soil and it's just getting thrashed. And so I've been focusing a lot on copper for the utilization of oxygen and stuff. But
well, that's kind of interesting because copper tends to be high in plant foods. I mean, I think people who are only eating plant foods tend to get too much copper and not enough iron, not enough calcium, maybe not enough magnesium. And so that can throw you out of balance. Too much copper is, as we know, not a good thing. But you absolutely need copper.
Yeah, I've had Morley Robbins on, and he says, whole food copper is found in whole food vitamin C because it's the complex, and then beef liver is like the best source, and then shellfish.
Yes, shellfish. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so, how many books do you have now? You have one in the works, and then a bunch of other ones.
Oh well, I was just counting up. I have 8. So,
wow.
But the main one is Nourishing Traditions, and then I think germane to our discussion today is the book on baby and child care. Nourishing Traditions book of baby and childcare. I have a cookbook for children, Nourishing Traditions cookbook for children, and then my last 3 books were kind of a series: Nourishing Broth, Nourishing Fats, and Nourishing Diets.
That's awesome. Yeah, the child care stuff, pregnancy and child care is just so important because I worked in a juvenile detention school for 4 years and just saw the parents come in and see, how they looked and how they spoke and how they acted, and then looked at the children and saw that they were a product of their parents, and their parents were just feeding them, the usual slop that gets promoted. And the newest trend and the healthiest, processed food and all these things. And it was really sad and eye-opening to me.
And, this standard American diet, the SAD, does include meat, but when things go wrong and they go terribly wrong, then it's often blamed on the meat in the diets. Like you blame the McDonald's hamburger and not the bun and the fries and the Coca-Cola and the soy added to the hamburger or whatever. But they blame it on the meat.
Yeah, and I think there's still that myth. It's shocking, but the cholesterol and saturated fat causes heart disease myth. And that was it Ansel Keys?
It shocks me that people still believe this after all the hard work we've done. My husband was getting some gas this morning and he got into a conversation with a man about butter. Because the man asked him, you look great. My husband looks really young for his age. And he said, oh, yes, I eat tons of butter. And the man was shocked. He said, but butter has cholesterol in it. You can't eat butter. So it's still out there. Unfortunately, it's 100 years of propaganda against the competition to vegetable oils. And that's butter, lard, tallow, and so forth. And I like to point out that the vegetable oils, the industrial seed oils, are really the worst thing that's in the diet. They're even worse than sugar, and sugar is pretty bad. They're even worse than all the additives. But these fats and oils have no place in the diet. They are extremely toxic, and they don't carry all the nutrients that you get from animal fats, starting with the fat-soluble vitamins. And they're in everything. They're absolutely in every processed food. So, and then people cook in vegetable oil. They put spreads and margarines on their bread. This is the number one reason we are in such a crisis today. And if people do eat meat, they cut all the fat off. They think the fat's the bad part. The fat's the best part of the meat and the part you should be eating. In fact, meat is very difficult to digest without the fat.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I tend to like the leaner kind of grass-fed cuts or bison or grass-fed beef with a little less fat, but it might be slightly an individual thing. But yeah, saturated fat is definitely awesome. And that's cool that you brought that up, because I've been studying Dr. Ray Peat's work for a couple of years. And he really pioneered the whole seed oil information and talking about just how that's tied to all the estrogen industry and just how everything connects with the vegetable oil propaganda that occurred. And it's really, my understanding, it's kind of saturated fat versus unsaturated fat. And people believe that unsaturated fat doesn't clog your arteries, but saturated fat does, when it's the exact opposite.
Well, it's really animal fat versus plant oils. Now, olive oil is okay, coconut oil, palm oil, in small amounts, but you need the animal fats, and the seed oils are they're just such garbage in every way. And this is why we're so sick. And eventually, I compare them to the lead pipes in Roman times, because eventually they lead to infertility. The soybean oil, which 80% of this oil is soybean oil, that's got estrogens in it, so they're feminizing, and they, they're anti-fertility. This is why it's so hard for couples to get pregnant these days, and that's the whole goal, is to have healthy children.
Right. Yeah, and you stack that with xenoestrogens and the receipt paper and all the contact we have with these plastics. It's really scary. No wonder we have the societal issues.
Yeah, but worst of all is what we're eating in the vegetable oils and in the soybean products. And I do believe that the big push for vegetarianism is largely coming from the soy industry. We've given them kind of a kick in the pants in the past 10 years, talking about how dangerous they are, how unhealthy, and they have not seen the kind of growth that they wanted to see. But they're still pushing vegetarianism. And what's really tragic is that it's kind of the neat thing to do if you're a teenage girl. It's the save the planet or be spiritual or who knows what. And this is the very time in their lives when they need to be eating a really nutrient-dense diet so they can have healthy children. And, they may not be interested in having children when not interested in children, right? But one day that will become the most important thing to them, is to have a baby and a healthy baby. It will become an obsession. And it's so tragic then when you really want to have a baby and you can't get pregnant. And we see this all the time, not just in vegetarians, but especially in vegetarians.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And there's so many deficiencies, the B vitamins, the choline, just the saturated fat.
A, D, and K, arachidonic acid, omega-3s, complete protein. Calcium is another one that's going to be deficient. And in cultures that did not have dairy foods, they had to take special pains to get enough calcium in a diet. And they usually did it by crushing the bones of small animals and adding them to their food. And I don't think anyone's going to do that here. The way we get calcium is through dairy products. And they definitely need to be part of the diet, especially if you want to have healthy children and strong bones. And of course, we recommend raw dairy products, raw, whole, pasture-fed milk, cheese, butter, cream, kefir, yogurt, and so forth.
Yeah, that's cool you brought that up, because I get a lot of questions from people that are lactose intolerant, or what if I can't have dairy is the big question. And
well, yeah, I always say try, because you're probably not lactose intolerant, you're pasteurization intolerant. And we did a study where we found that 82% of people diagnosed as lactose intolerant could drink raw milk without any problem. Now, you need to start slowly. If you have not drunk milk in a long time, I would not suggest you drink 8 ounces of cold raw milk. You start slowly, a few tablespoons, and then gradually build up.
Yeah, I've read that it's the lactase enzyme deficiency. So if you could build up that lactase production just by slowly introducing it, right?
Well, it could be lactase, could be all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you drink raw milk, that fosters good bacteria in the gut, and they produce lactase, which is the enzyme for digesting lactose.
Interesting. That's awesome. And as far as calcium sources, do you believe dairy is the best source?
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you can get calcium from other foods. You'd have to eat, I think it's something like 24 carrots to get the same amount of calcium in a glass of milk. That's very hard to do, eat 24 carrots. I think it's, 5 cups of spinach. Again, I don't think many people can eat 5 cups of spinach. And there's blockers in the spinach that might prevent you from absorbing the calcium. I think it's 32 pieces of whole wheat bread will provide the same amount of calcium. A lot of calories there. It's 4.5 cups of almonds will provide the same amount of calcium as 2 cups of raw milk. But that's very hard to eat 4.5 cups of almonds. And they have a lot of phytic acid in them. They have a lot of salicylates, the things that might cause problems.
Yeah, for years in my raw vegan days, I was eating salad, I think 5 years straight, just a big bowl of salad for dinner. And I started to research just how raw vegetables can thrash the gut. It's just very harsh. And a lot of people, cook their vegetables now if they're healing their gut.
Yeah, you do get a lot of gut problems with the vegetarian diet, especially a raw vegetarian diet. So I'm really distressed and concerned about people eating kale chips and making smoothies with kale. Kale needs to be cooked well, cooked with fat, and then it's, provides some nourishment for you.
That's awesome. What are your thoughts on the whole Beyond Meat Impossible Burger thing? Because you kind of touched on the vegan fad. And there's a Game Changers documentary recently. And I think there's just a lot of celebrities faking it. I don't believe I think they're just doing it for fame and stuff, possibly, but
maybe. The guy who owns the Impossible Burger says his goal is to have nobody eating meat by, I think it's 2032. Good luck. Good luck.
Jeez. Yeah, it's sad to me because I have a little homestead here, and my
Mhm.
girlfriend and I have a couple goats and 6 hens and a rooster and some geese, and it seems just like it's very healing for the land. I mean, poop's going everywhere and making the soil awesome, and, and just it seems very regenerative. But for people to try to go against that is insane. It's weird.
Well, beef has been accused of being bad for the environment. But if you raise the beef properly with managed grazing, it actually improves the soil, improves the environment. You don't have to raise any grain for the beef. And you can regenerate your soil with beef if you're doing it right. That's what we're encouraging, the right way of raising animals. And that involves moving them frequently, usually every day.
Definitely, yeah. Do you have any animals? Or
Well, we have a farm, yes. We have a dairy farm. So we make raw cheese, we sell pet milk, and we do beef, chicken, turkey, eggs, and pork.
oh, that's cool. Yeah, before the interview, I gave we have a German Shepherd pup. I gave him a quart of raw milk from our goats, and I thought about you because it's funny. I go to every pet store and they sell usually raw goat milk for dogs, and it's like this big health thing. But people don't
Yeah.
realize how it's healthy for humans too, not just
Yes,
your pet.
right. It's interesting. Raw milk for pets is legal in every state. Not every state has people doing it there, but it is legal in every state.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people resort to just buying pet milk if they can't get. I moved from California, and it's like you had to go underground, like Craigslist and stuff, and find these farms and make personal connections to get raw milk. There's some now in the health food stores, but only a few
raw
brands.
milk is California is a pretty good state. You can get raw milk in health food stores. There's a number of dairies doing raw milk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen like pets come back from the brink of death drinking raw milk, or do you have any cool stories on that?
Well, I personally don't have any pets, but I've definitely heard wonderful stories, especially recovery from injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, I think we could jump into the Q&A, and then I'm sure I might have some questions that come up
Okay.
kind of offshoot. But someone asked about dental health in general. What do you recommend for the teeth health, and specifically root canals and mercury fillings? What are your thoughts on all that?
So Dr. Price, as you know, studied traditional cultures all around the world, and he found 13 cultures where they had no cavities. So the cavity is the first sign that you have nutrient deficiencies. And by the way, it's usually the first thing that shows up when you're a vegan. Has that been your experience?
Oh,
Tooth
absolutely.
decay.
I chipped a tooth. Yeah. I credit it to K2 deficiency.
Yes, and K2 we need AD and K2 together, and we get those from animal foods. Best sources of K2 are chicken livers and poultry livers, and poultry fat, like duck fat, whatever. But anyway, where were we? So then people get fillings and they get root canals, and the cavities are kind of a sign of poor health, but the mercury fillings in the root canals will contribute to poor health. And we really don't recommend them. Always find a holistic dentist who it's much better to have that tooth taken out than to do a root canal. And you want a ceramic filling and not the amalgam fillings, because those amalgam fillings are outgassing mercury into your sinus cavities all the time. There's a picture of it on the internet. So people trying to regain health, we always say it's one of the most important ways is to look at the mouth and get those mercury fillings out and get the root canals out, especially if you end up with cancer. I mean, to me, that would be the very first thing you do is remove the root canals and remove the mercury.
That's awesome. I like that you brought up the interrelationship with not only K2, but A and D, how those work together, because...
Yeah, they all three work together. So what Dr. Price did was he gave cod liver oil, which has A and D, and then he gave what he called high vitamin butter oil, which has the vitamin K2 in it.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I come from the supplement world, and people are like taking isolated D and isolated A. And I tend to say get it from food for the most part. I mean, there's maybe
Yeah.
context sometimes, but
I really think the future of food is the cod liver oils like butter oil, emu oil, and then the desiccated organ meats, desiccated heart, desiccated liver. Desiccated oysters is a really good supplement, especially for recovering vegetarians. It's got so many minerals in it. Plus, I mean, it's got everything in it, desiccated oysters. So that, to me, that is the future of supplements. We will realize the folly of taking synthetic supplements. You know, these are all made in China with the worst type of quality control. And the synthetic do not have the same effects on the body as the natural.
Yeah, and talking with Morley and other colleagues, it's like whenever you take something in isolation, you really have to understand that what's on the other side of the seesaw, and most people don't. And that's the scary part, because they're just they don't know what they're throwing out of balance with what, and something, you know, you may need a lot of, but you better know what it's connected to.
Well, a very good example is vitamin D. Everyone's, taking several thousand units of synthetic vitamin D. That's D3 or D2, either one. You know, there's 1,000 forms of vitamin D. And when we get the vitamin D from food, we get all those forms. But when you're just taking one form of vitamin D, you can end up with signs of vitamin D deficiency and also vitamin A deficiency, because you need vitamin A to use vitamin D. And if you take too much vitamin D, you're not going to have enough vitamin A.
Good point. Yeah, I just did an episode yesterday with Jim Stevenson. He has a Facebook group on secosteroid hormone D that just goes really deep into kind of why not to supplement vitamin D. And his big point was that 125D hydroxy is way more important. That's the active form versus 25D, which is the one they test for, which is storage. And there's 12 different forms of 25D, and are they testing for 12 different? Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can take a supplement like cod liver oil, natural cod liver oil, and you have to be careful with cod liver oil, because most industrial cod liver oil has been so ruined by the processing that they put synthetic A and D back in. So you're not getting natural vitamin D in most brands of cod liver oil.
Wow, that's like the Horizon milk. I used to go to like Sprouts and see like they add synthetic, they had algae oil, which is GMO from China, algae oil, omega-3, and then I'll see like A and D, and just those are not good.
And that's ultra pasteurized milk. I mean, you can't save that kind of milk no matter what you put in it. So
yeah. I want to go back to K2 really quick, because you mentioned chicken liver, I believe, the best sources of K2.
Poultry fat.
Poultry fat. Okay.
So calf's liver has a lot of A in it, and we always say, well, you cook the calf's liver in lard, so you got your D, but you still don't have a lot of K there. There is some, but not a lot. But the poultry liver I really like, because it's such a nice balance of A, D, and K. They're all there. You don't have to worry about, what else you need to add to that.
That's awesome. And have you researched like the different forms? Because I know there's tons of different K2, like MK4 is, my understanding, is in most animal foods, and then MK7 is only in Natto and aged cheese.
Right. So we actually had an article on this, I think it was in our spring issue. The price factor of Dr. Price, the X factor, is MK4. And most animal fats are up to 100% MK4. And that's the one that really works. There are some sources of the other forms of vitamin K. They're made by fermentation, so naturally you'd find it in cheese, a little bit in sauerkraut, things like that. But the supplements are all the higher forms of MK. They're not MK4. And I think they could actually do a lot of harm.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I just see a lot of research on like A and D, but not a lot on E and K. I've been diving really into vitamin E too, and how the seed oils, especially.
And vitamin E you get in plant foods too. So we don't concentrate so much on that. The other thing about vitamin E is when you need a lot of vitamin E is when you're eating a lot of vegetable oils.
Hmm.
But if you're eating natural fats and oils, the vitamin E is always there, and there's enough vitamin E to handle the fat or the oil. So, butter, for example, butter has a lot of vitamin E in it.
Hmm. Yeah, I put butter on my steak. I love it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned fermentation. That's a good segue. Someone asked, please discuss fermented foods and lactic acid. Would fermented honey be a good source of probiotics?
Well, you definitely want fermented foods in your diet. Every single traditional culture, there are no exceptions to this, had fermented foods in the diet. The Eskimos fermented their meat and fish. The South Sea Islanders fermented their tubers and their fish. You find fermented fish in Scandinavia for fermented meat products in many cultures. Salami is a fermented food, for example. And of course, the fermented plant foods like sauerkraut, pickles, radishes, all these kinds of things. And you really need some fermented food in your diet, or either food or beverage, every day to replenish the good bacteria in your gut and to just support good digestion overall. And this is a very important thing to have in your diet. A little sauerkraut with every meal. I drink beet kvass, which is a fermented drink, but you want some fermented foods every day. Not a lot. In 1 tablespoon of cabbage, there's as much probiotic activity as in a whole bottle of probiotic pills. So that's where you get your good bacteria and your good digestive support.
That's awesome. And playing in nature too, right? And getting dirt on your hands and fingernails.
Yeah. Yeah. But the fermented foods are really very important.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Someone asked, is raw liver safe to consume while pregnant?
We always suggest that you freeze the liver for 14 days. And a very good way of taking liver, especially if you don't really like it, is to cut it into pea-sized pieces, freeze it on some parchment paper or something, and then you can put them in a container. Keep them frozen. You can just swallow those like pills, like vitamin pills. And that's very inexpensive and easy to do. So freezing is absolutely fine. I mean, you do need to freeze it first before you eat the liver. And you can eat it raw if you want to, but you definitely need to do that freezing step to make sure there's no parasites there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wasn't raised on liver. I know a lot of people were. And so that's a good step for me before I get into liver pates and smoothies and stuff.
Yeah.
I have friends that make those recipes, but I need someone.
I never ate liver in my whole life till I went to France. Oh. And then I discovered liver pate, and it was like my body said, oh, this is what you've been looking for. And I couldn't stop eating liver then. I just was so depleted of all the things you get in liver. Now I can't eat more than 2 or 3 bites because I don't need all those nutrients. I'm replete. But at the time, it was like this amazing discovery.
Yeah. I took a lot of like nootropic supplements, and nothing compares to me to fresh liver. And it's definitely even more powerful than desiccated because it's the real thing. And it's like
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel it in my brain for sure every time. Someone asked if you can't get grass-fed liver, is conventional okay?
You know what I would suggest is calves liver from the supermarket, because calves in this country are, not so much dairy cows, but beef cows are on grass for the first 6 months of their life. That's the ranching part of beef production in the country. So I would definitely think you could use calves liver. I'd be very careful of poultry liver from the supermarket. I mean, those livers even look different. They look pretty gross.
Yeah, I tried one from grocery outlet and it said grass-fed, but maybe because it wasn't frozen, but it just tasted like bad, like fermented, or I don't know. It was weird.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, a chicken liver should be dark, like a beef liver, dark and smooth and not, gross or anything. It should be really clean looking.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Someone asked, And you kind of alluded to this earlier. If they can't get raw milk, is low heat pasteurized a good option? Is it better than nothing?
No, I don't think so. No, I would get cheese. The pasteurized cheese is a little bit better, but I just would not consume any pasteurized milk, and certainly not ultra pasteurized. But it's getting easier and easier to get raw milk. Go to realmilk.com. We have listings from every state. If it's not being produced in the state, it's being brought into the state. There's food groups. I call it the Amish Empire. There's Amish deliveries. There's a lot of raw milk out there now.
Awesome. Yeah, when I was in California, I was using a Miller's Organic Farm, even though it was shipped from the East Coast to here to the California. It was worth it. I would get tons of raw milk in glass. It's kind of fun to store that. Someone asked, does gelatin work as well as bone broth?
Well, it can work. I'm always a little bit concerned about where that gelatin comes from. I mean, gelatin's going to have a lot of glyphosate in it if it's not, truly grass-fed. I think there's other nutrients in bone broth that are not just in plain Jello, but in plain gelatin, excuse me. But if this is all you have, it's still better than nothing.
Awesome.
It's just like what I would say with supermarket meat. If that's all you can get, you still need the meat.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let's see. We got a bunch of questions related to pregnancy. What causes a positive GPS/Strep test? I don't know what that's about. But
Okay, so what they're doing now, before 2 or 3 weeks before you have your baby, they're giving you a strep test. And if it's positive, then they load you up with antibiotics. And 1 in 3 is positive. It means nothing if you have a positive strep test. It's just, strep is not that dangerous, especially in your own body. So my advice is do not get the strep test. Don't get it. Then they have no excuse for giving you antibiotics.
That's simple enough. That's awesome. What supplements or minerals should you take during pregnancy?
So we have a whole pregnancy diet. It's really the diet that's important. We do not recommend prenatals. They're all with synthetic vitamins. We do recommend that you eat liver during pregnancy, and if you're not going to eat liver, then you might take the desiccated liver. But first and foremost, we recommend a natural cod liver oil. Use one of our recommended brands that has a natural A and D in it. But you need to be getting your nutrition, your nutrients from food. We recommend raw milk, 2 egg yolks a day, plenty of beef and lamb, plenty of animal fats. We have a whole pregnancy diet. We actually have a fridge magnet for our pregnancy diet.
That's awesome. That makes it easy. Yeah, because someone asked, what's your best protocol prior to pregnancy, during, and after? So I'd imagine you break it down in your book as well, right?
Ta-da! Right here. Okay. And as I say, we have a fridge magnet. We have articles on our website, but it's the same preconception for both the man and the woman, during pregnancy, during lactation, and during the growth of the child. The diet is the same. Very nutrient-dense diet. A lot of A, D, and K in the diet. Soaked in fermented grains. Natural, unrefined sea salt is very, very important. It just makes me cringe when they tell pregnant women to avoid salt, because you need that salt for the baby's brain. And you need salt for digestion. And by the way, the requirement for salt is 1.5 teaspoons per day. That's what adults need to get all the sodium and chloride that the body requires. And that 1.5 teaspoons of salt provides 800 milligrams of magnesium if it's unrefined salt. That's twice the RDA. So there's your magnesium right there. You don't have to worry about it.
That's awesome. And do you use Celtic? Because I used to do Himalayan, and then I looked at the high iron content, and I stopped that, and I did like Celtic, or I did Celtic for a while, and now I do.
Well, I think Celtic is okay. The Celtic sea salt, they actually tested theirs for microplastics and didn't find any. So I think the Celtic sea salt is very good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got all the trace minerals of seawater in it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Okay. Let's see. Dairy sensitivity in a breastfed baby. How to help them grow out of it.
Well, how do they know the baby's dairy sensitive? I'm just.
Yeah, it's not clear. Maybe they're getting rashes. I don't know.
Yeah, is baby getting rashes? I wouldn't assume that was dairy sensitivity. I mean, that is really, truly rare for a baby to be sensitive to mom's milk. Really, truly rare. But I would tell the mother to watch her diet and make sure she's eating a really clean diet and kind of keep a food log. If there's a flare up, what did she eat before she breastfed? That might give her some clues.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. I know my friend Morley has said that it really depends what the mother ate, because that could really affect the baby's immune system. And he said like a mother donates 10% of her minerals to her firstborn child, and then next baby it's like 9% and then 8%. And so there's this offloading of minerals into the baby, and that could, if the mom's already deficient in minerals, that's not good. Right?
Right. And any toxin the mother is eating will go into her milk. It's just axiomatic. So she needs to avoid glyphosate. She needs to eat only organic, especially her grains, and avoid any exposure to toxins.
That's awesome. That makes sense. And you're a fan of natural sources of carbohydrates like raw honey and raw milk, right?
Raw honey, raw milk, maple syrup. We do have a sweet taste in our mouths, and it does need to be satisfied, and not by overdoing it, but with natural sweeteners in moderate amounts. We don't like to advocate a very restrictive diet. We like to say there's no renunciation on the wise traditions diet. So you can have all these things. It's just you need to pay attention to quality and how things are prepared, what kind of fats you use, what kind of salt you use, all those things. But you can have a hamburger. You can have bread if it's made properly. You can have French fries if you fry them in an animal fat. You can have all those things. But it's just the quality of the fats and the way the various foods are prepared.
Yeah, I fully agree. And there are more food establishments now offering options like that that makes it easier, and definitely moving to a state. I mean, Idaho, it's like there's grass-fed beef pretty much everywhere here. So certain areas.
That's good.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about mental, maybe even emotional health, but you have a great, there's a great section on the Weston A Price website, mental and emotional health, and various articles talking about kind of the relationship with the gut and just nutrition and all of it. And do you think, like when I worked at a school and I saw these just kids going crazy after they ate lunch and just squirming in their seat and just like losing control of their bodies and their mouth or whatever, that's caused a lot by the poisons in the food, right? Just the toxins and the chemicals.
Yes, low blood sugar. The brain is an organ of the body, just like every other organ. It needs to be nourished, and it doesn't like being poisoned. And when the brain's not working, you do get these manifestations of mental problems. The hypothalamus, often point out that the hypothalamus is right in the center of your head, and it is the seat of impulse control. So if your hypothalamus is not nourished and supported with vitamin A and all these good nutrients, you won't have a lot of impulse control, which means you might drink too much, or you might rape somebody, or who knows, or you might cry all the time, or be depressed or whatever. So that's a gland that needs nutritional support, just like all the rest of the body.
That makes total sense. And I know the pituitary, the hypothalamus, these are really responsive to light too. And we have with this whole COVID
Yes.
thing, people moving to, I hear from parents all the time. My neighbors telling me they're not reopening the school here. And it's like, so now kids are going to be staring at blue backlit, blue wavelength screens all day for their education. And that's not good for the brain.
Well, you need exposure to blue light, otherwise you don't know when it's day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at night, there's screens that take out the blue light. But I think the most important thing is in bed, when you get in bed and you read or whatever, you can have a red light there. And one of the things that we do that I think is very important, sometimes it's hard to set up, but at night, well, we don't have Wi-Fi in the house. We turn that off. If we did have it, we would turn it off. And we turn off the electricity in our bedroom. And that would be like turning off the fuses to your bedroom, not just turning off all the lights, but you don't want any electricity in the wires. And you can have an electrician set that up with a switch by your bed. That would be costly, but you can also do it by just cutting out the fuses to your bedroom. And people who have trouble sleeping, that's the first thing I would recommend. You will sleep so much more soundly when your body's not dealing with all of those frequencies in your wires. Another thing I recommend just before going to sleep is taking a pinch of unrefined salt, pinch of sea salt. Just put it in your mouth, and there's your magnesium and your sodium and all the good things that help your body relax and go to sleep. If you are not getting good sleep, you are going to have a lot of mental health problems, I think. Sleep is so important. That's where when you heal, that's when your body gets rid of waste products and kind of resets itself. And these people who say, oh, I only sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, I think for you, you never really recover from what you've done in a day.
Yeah, it's almost like a bragging thing, right? Like how high can you perform on less sleep?
Yeah. Raw milk also is very good for helping you get to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love drinking a glass of that.
But I really would suggest that you see if you can turn off not just the lights, but the electricity in your bedroom at night, because that's when you need that calm the most. By the way, one easy thing is don't have an electric alarm clock on your bedside table. Get a little battery alarm clock and unplug the electric one. That's easy to do.
Those are all great tips. And I think that's a good introduction. I could always have you back, and hopefully my connection's better after your book comes out. So
So I'd just like to give a plug for membership. The Weston A Price Foundation is a member-supported organization. We publish a journal, a really good journal, and that comes out quarterly, and we have a lot of materials. We watch the vaccination issues in every state, and send out alerts as needed. We're a very, very active organization. We also have chapter leaders in every state who can help you find raw milk and the foods we're talking about. So please support the work we do, but with a membership. And the other thing I wanted to just mention is I do have a blog, nourishingtraditions.com. Been a little neglected lately, but I'll be getting back to it shortly. Had a few other projects.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'll put all the links below to all of that. And yeah, thanks for all the work that you do, Sally. I think just what the organization puts out is awesome, and the articles are awesome and very helpful to people. And your books, I definitely recommend people dive into your books, especially if they're looking to create a healthy baby.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Sally. Well, thanks so much. Stick around as I close out the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
That wraps up today's show. I liked what Sally said about the kill switch for the bedroom. I think people take it to the extreme and try to kill the power to the whole house, but that is not always practical. So I think that was an awesome tip. I really like the Magnetico sleep pad. I sleep on 20 Gauss strength, which is 40 times the Earth's magnetic field of magnetism. And it's not a natural field. It's not just like sleeping on magnets and you're just getting the energy from the magnets. The magnets are actually amplifying, pulling up, so to speak, the Earth's natural field, and it's just funneling with the magnets through your body, funneling it up through your body. So the Magnetico sleep pad has been a huge game changer for my health. I also use the Blue Shield Ultra device plugged in all the time, and various Somavedic devices. I started with their green, and then now I use their gold Somavedic unit. But that's kind of my orders of priorities there. And in certain contexts, you might need the Stetzer dirty electricity filters. But I'm just really glad she brought up sleep and EMFs, because that is often overlooked with health issues. If someone's not healing, then you definitely have to look at sleep and look at their whole bedroom situation. And if they're waking up rested and falling asleep easily and not waking up through the night, all of that is really important. So I like this episode because it was pretty simple and basic. And I have a lot of episodes that are just very geeky and very in-depth, like my previous episode with Jim Stevenson Jr. and Morley Robbins. Very complex, a lot of biochemical pathways and chemistry jargon in there that might be hard to understand. And so every once in a while, I like having more simple episodes like this where it's just a good introduction, especially for someone that hasn't been eating from farms or sourcing from homesteads and has been sourcing grocery store food. I feel like the Weston A Price Foundation really shines in this area of education. And years ago, I actually read the article 22 Reasons Not to Go Vegetarian. And Sally Fallon posted that in April of 2009. And I think it was a pretty good summary of why not to go vegetarian, or you could say vegan. Some of my friends, like Adam Bergstrom, is pretty much vegetarian and he seems to be thriving. But there's something to be said of intermittent oyster consumption and grass-fed beef liver consumption and muscle meat that I don't get from other foods. There's just something very special about those. And I feel like it's largely related to the mineral content of those foods. And so I know that there's a huge controversy about cod liver oil, fermented cod liver oil, often abbreviated FCLO, and oxidation, and it being a PUFA and a polyunsaturated fat, and why she and the organization recommends that. And I just really didn't want to get into that because I don't feel like it's really fair to invite a guest on to debate when that wasn't the stated intention in the invitation. And I don't think she would have even accepted if that was the case. And so I would say listen to my other podcasts about PUFAs. Listen to the one with Adam Bergstrom, Danny Roddy, Georgie Dinkoff, Kate Deering, Josh Rubin. All of these people have great information about PUFAs. Even Jessica Ash, Lauren De La Cruz. A bunch of people that I've had on the podcast have really great information. Also, Tim Berzins. He has some YouTube videos on PUFAs and their negative effects. So it's something to look into. And like I said in the beginning of the show, you take what's good and you leave what is not. And so I don't believe that it's really healthy to agree 100% with anyone unless that person is Jesus Christ, who has all the puzzle pieces. I don't think we're going to agree with anyone on Earth because that's just not natural. It's not the way things work. And so it's okay that I don't agree with Sally Fallon on cod liver oil being healthy. I think it's not healthy. And I disagree with Morley on that too, and that is fine. It's okay to disagree, and will likely never change your mind. Definitely not through debate. I've never seen debate change people's mind on either way. So I think it's just a matter of just keep sharing information, and hopefully the good information will permeate enough and start to change the dominant conversation in the alternative health community. And my friend actually sent me a picture at Sprouts the other day, health food store, showing that the omega-3 supplements were being discontinued. They were on closeout. And I don't know if that's due to this podcast. It's actually growing quite a bit. I'm quickly approaching the top 100 alternative health podcasts on iTunes. So I really appreciate you listening to the show and leaving a review and sharing it with your friends. I love getting this information out there. And that's why I started this podcast. I was just kind of frustrated with the dominant discussion in the alternative health community. I was just bored. And besides my friend Justin and Extreme Health Radio, Justin and Kate, most podcasts are just the same old story. Intermittent fasting, extremism, carnivore, extreme detox, restricting macronutrients, just a lot of just the same information regurgitated over and over and over again. Or the same people that have written books, and you'll find their books on the shelves in health food stores, that aren't integrity people. And these people keep going on podcasts just because they have a large following. And I don't agree with that. I'd rather have someone on like I have before that has less than 1,000 followers, but has awesome information. I think that's a large part of the success of this podcast. I'm not seeking out large names with followings of 300,000, 500K just to get clicks. I'm finding people that are quality over quantity. And that's very rare today in various aspects of life. I also want to say I thought the desiccated oyster supplement was interesting. I didn't know that existed. And that's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of desiccated liver. And I think even if you're eating the real thing, for someone that's extremely compromised, aka everyone, it's very beneficial to take desiccated liver, like 3 grams, 6 capsules every day. Because you're getting a lot of retinol and you're getting a lot of copper and a lot of other nutrients in there that are very hard to get, that are found only in those ratios and forms in liver. I also liked Sally's recommendation for a pinch of salt before bed. I'm really against sea salt for the most part. Most sea salts are toxic and full of really harmful heavy metals, especially if it's gray. You have to ask why the salt is gray. It's because that gray color is from heavy metal contamination. And you look up the analysis of those gray salts. I'm not going to name a brand, but you know the one I'm talking about. And you'll see quite a bit of heavy metals in there. You look at Himalayan sea salt, that reddish orange color is iron. So you're getting a ton of iron with Himalayan salt. I ate that for years. That's a pure poison. So I think it's really good to really define what sea salt to consume. And for me, that would only be white sea salt, extremely white sea salt, because that means that there's no impurities to it. And that same kind of argument can be carried over to sugar. And if you're making cookies or desserts or pastries or anything like that, maybe low PUFA donuts like I have on my website, probably would have opted for pure sucrose, not brown. Because you have to ask what that brown sugar is. What are the minerals in there? Are they even organic carbon-bonded minerals? Probably not. So just because something's extremely processed, just because something's white flour, white sugar, and this is probably where I differ again from Sally, and that's again quite okay to have disagreements. Don't need to go to war over it, but I just think there's a lot of censorship, and so that is a time to go to war, especially if there's sales involved and people's health are getting harmed. I've seen that with the whole algae oil industry being marketed to pregnant vegan mothers. And unfortunately, there are a lot of fake vegans out there with hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram marketing algae oil to unsuspecting victims like vampires because they're making thousands of dollars per month to pay their rent or to pay for their dinners or whatever, or vacations. And a lot of them know it. And so a lot of them maybe don't care as well. But I really want to expose the polyunsaturated fat supplement industry because there's a case for food. You know, there's vitamin E in these foods, like beef liver. There's some in shellfish. I don't think it's enough to reverse lipofuscinosis and PUFA damage from a lifetime of consuming PUFAs in excess. And again, that's polyunsaturated fatty acids. I believe that it's important to supplement. And on that note, I keep getting slammed with messages. It's going to be the last 2 weeks of this month that my PUFA Protect Vitamin E product will be out. And it's going to be a brand new formula with essentially double the amount per capsule. So the price will go up just a little bit because it's actually going to be more potent against lipid peroxidation and have more in it per bottle, but it will be totally worth it. So anyway, little tangent there. But those are just my thoughts around the whole thing. I just had a ton of people beating the war drum, you know, confront her. And it's like, well, let's just get this information on animal foods being beneficial out there. And everyone has their, you know, focus. For me, it's really lipofuscin and PUFAs. But I also talk about the importance of animal foods. So I think the Weston A Price is just a really basic, good starting point for people's health. If you could just find a local farm, start sourcing from that farm, and start benefiting from high quality animal foods. We eat three eggs every day, and the chickens are just starting to produce, but it's pretty slow. It's like 2 to 3 eggs a day, so that's not enough. But hopefully that production will go up, and they're drinking a lot of pristine water, which makes a difference because the water that animals drink matters, and that goes into the products that they make, especially in terms of milk. That's the whole reason why I have goats. I don't know anyone else on the globe that's giving their goats or cows pristine water that's acid-free, contaminant-free, and bicarbonate-rich water. That is really, to me, the most important aspect of animal agriculture is the water that you're giving them. And I've visited farm after farm after farm after farm for years, and it's all well water. It's all unfiltered well water. And remember that well water is full of iron and a lot of the time excess calcium. So if you want to check out Sally's work, you can go to nourishingtraditions.com. That's the blog, or westonaprice.org, or realmilk.com. I'll put all the links to those below. And just keep learning, keep studying. If you haven't heard my other episodes, go back. A lot of the older ones are really awesome. Even the first 20 podcasts, go back and listen to those because there's a ton of info to help you connect the dots to improve your health. So you can find my work at matt-blackburn.com. And I've been a little behind on the blog, just really delving into homesteading up here in Idaho. But I promise I'll get back to posting blogs. I've also been focusing on the Mitolife brand, and the podcast has really been my focus. And we have a German Shepherd puppy, and so that's very demanding. It's like having a child. And trying to just juggle everything this year has been just a challenge to keep up with everything. There's a lot of animals to take care of here, but it's fun, and I'm definitely having fun doing it. So if you go to matt-blackburn.com, I have all of my recommended products up there. I'll highlight a few right now. The marshmallows. If you don't know how to make marshmallows at home, Sweet Apricity is a really great website to check out. And whenever you click buy now on my website, it sends you to their website. And these marshmallows are from grass-fed gelatin. And there's one or two other companies out there selling semi-healthy marshmallows with not tons of chemicals in it and relatively clean. But I mean, these are super, super clean and awesome. They also have these caramels that are really good. They're salted caramel lily puffs. So from the lily flower, it's a really innovative product. It kind of tastes like popcorn. Really awesome on the road. Here in Idaho, everything's spread out, and so bringing food in the car is just part of living here. And this food always stays in the center console of the car. A glass of milk, some other goodies, maybe some gummy bears, homemade gummies. Really, really, really good. So I just wanted to highlight that product. It also goes amazing with coffee. Again, not a meal replacement. You want to eat, then have your coffee with your marshmallows. That's kind of the combo there, or order of operations, so to speak. So I also mentioned the vitamin E PUFA Protect. That's at mitolife.co, and that product will be back soon. Again, getting slammed, asking when it's going to come back every second of every day. But in the meantime, my spore-based probiotic is up there. That's the Mitolife probiotic and endotoxin reducer. Someone sent me an awesome testimonial yesterday. They said, by the way, the endotoxin probiotic literally made my weird acne vanish. So I added in Dairy Absorb, holy game changer. Struggled with IBS for 15 years, and my constant bloat and cramping is gone. And I can finally love ice cream again. Seriously effective products. I thought that was pretty cool. Dairy Absorb was a fun one to make because I do love ice cream. Not the unhealthy stuff, but the better quality, organic, ideally grass-fed ice cream, but even organic ice cream. Just try to find cleaner ice cream. You could even get it online from certain places. millersorganicfarm.com. That's where I used to source when I was in California, and I was having trouble finding good dairy down there. That was a really good option. And also the vitamin K, menaquinone 7 is not found in high amounts in foods besides natto and aged cheese. And you have to eat a lot of aged cheese to get up into the thousands of micrograms. And so it's easy to do that with a supplement, and it's easy to get to those therapeutic is the key word, therapeutic levels of MK7 dosage. And so that's my Purely K supplement. Smells amazing when you open the bottle, and I take about 8 to 10 a day personally, because I'm kind of doing what I did with the vitamin E last year, starting off at a really, really high dose, and then maybe tapering off after a year. Today's quote is from Sally's blog, 22 Reasons Not to Go Vegetarian. And here she is countering a claim from vegetarians that your bones will last longer. Dr. Herta Spencer of the Veterans Administration of Hospital in Hines, Illinois, explains that the animal and human studies that correlated calcium loss with high-protein diets used isolated fractionated amino acids from milk or eggs. Her studies show that when protein is given as meat, subjects do not show any increase in calcium excreted or any significant change in serum calcium, even over a long period. Other investigators found that a high protein intake increased calcium absorption when dietary calcium was adequate or high, but not when calcium intake was a low 500 milligrams per day. So meat alone will not help build strong bones, but meat plus dairy is an excellent combination. The chart below illustrates the difficulty of obtaining adequate calcium from green leafy vegetables or legumes, and contradicts the claim made above that leafy green vegetables and legumes supply more calcium on a per calorie basis. The opposite is the case. The RDA for calcium can be met for under 700 calories using cheese or milk, but requires 1,200 calories for spinach and 5,100 calories for lentils. And not even the most dedicated vegetarians could choke down 13 cups of spinach or 32 cups of lentils per day. Leafy greens present additional problems because they contain calcium-binding oxalic acid. Calcium assimilation requires not only adequate protein but also fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K2, found only in animal fats. The lacto-ovo vegetarian consuming butter and full-fat milk will take in the types of nutrients needed to maintain healthy bone mass, but not the vegan.